the assassination of JFK, and I don't think America's ever been the same. But you see, what was most controversial, people can tell you it was about this war, or it was about this policy or that got JFK killed. I say, look, do you need any more incentive, okay, than the fact that he was in the process of eliminating the Federal Reserve Bank? Do you understand? He was so serious about it, he was already circulating currency that supplanted it. Do you understand? We didn't need Federal Reserve notes for anything. People were gravitating to the Federal Reserve, to the new silver certificates or silver notes that looked just like regular dollars. At that time, I only remember seeing $1 bills and $5 bills being circulated, but I remember. So we need to talk about revisiting the assassination of JFK and get rid of the Federal Reserve, because there was not a hint of impropriety on their behalf, but there was glaring evidence of impropriety on the behalf of the Federal Reserve. And we could say, yeah, but if the FBI, some black hats, let's say, even if it's just a handful of black hats working in the FBI that pulled off the caper, who cares? I mean, that to me is, it's important who done it, but we know cui bono and who benefits. Okay, we know that is glaringly obvious who benefited. Well, how come the Federal Reserve, who that was JFK's going to be his biggest hallmark achievement of his presidency, was getting rid of this blight on our society that was working against the best interests of the American people, and JFK knew that. And he wanted to give the American people sound economic policies, sound currency, whereby we could see progress across the board. Okay, he knew about capitalism. He knew about supply and demand and free market. He knew what effect that would have on our society. JFK knew these things. Okay, and he knew what would be the result, what would be the effect of sound economic policies and sound currencies. He knew, let's say the worth started right here. This is measure the worth in terms of size. Okay, he knew that the worth would expand. And as the worth of that dollar expanded, you don't need to always be chasing your tail with cost of living adjustments for minimum wage workers and other workers just to keep up with the cost of living tax that we all know is being manipulated by colluding special interest groups. That's how they do it. That's how they fix prices, rig prices, and manipulate markets by collusion. So they control the markets, you understand? Or they get vast numbers of minions out there that are on the side of that issue, that commodity, let's say, manipulating housing, let's say. So you got real estate agents that make more commission, you got lenders that make more commission, you've got homeowners that will get more, in their minds, the small thinking, the narrow-minded, short-sighted. They think that it's good because, wow, my house is worth more. Okay, not thinking about future generations. And what was really going on here was coin clipping, currency debasement through market manipulation. It was unnatural, it was artificial, it was forced, it was inorganic. It was happening because it was being moved that way, okay, deliberately. It's the only way they can steal from the public. They want more. They want us more enslaved. They don't want us more free. And the way they do that is clipping your coins. They enslave you. So they slice the worth of your dollar. So instead of our dollar starting here in worth and going here like JFK intended it to, okay, it shrunk, and it's been steadily shrinking his whole presidency. And there's been, if you put it on a graph, it's steady, but there's been drop-off points, like getting off the silver standard after JFK, but slowly. They had to boil us slowly, like the frog in the water analogy, so we don't jump out and have a rebellion, whether it's velvet glove or otherwise. They want to stay in power. In order to do that, they can't have a revolt, bloody or otherwise, right? So they got to do this very systematically and stealthily, and that's what they do, cunningly and diabolically and gradually, incrementally. So we got off the silver standard, we got off the gold standard in the 70s, and then Bill Clinton, after his reign of terror, the greatest traitor in American history to the blue-collar working class person out there, labor class, was him allowing the Glass-Steagall Act to expire, which kept the banksters on a leash to some degree at least. There was they had to give accountability. It was a check and balance for their lending practices, and that was gone after Bill Clinton. A huge favor to these bankster gangster types, these absolute animals, Luciferians and Satanists in these places. I mean, that don't care about anybody but themselves. That's it. That's it. They didn't care about the American people, the direction the country would go, the debasement of the currency. So instead of coin clipping, visualize just a pair of scissors clipping the worth of your dollar. So we're down here now. Since the inception of the dollar in 1913, the Federal Reserve note, well over 90% of the value of the dollar has been chipped away at. So if you imagine the dollar starting as a silver or gold coin, they have just gnawed away, telling you, well, we start the game here, that this we deem as fair and ethical pay for a minimum wage worker. You get this coin, this little tiny gold coin or silver coin, okay? But now the game is rigged. So you say, well, then the game has to be reset all along. And for some people it has been. That's a cost of living adjustment they get. But for other people it hasn't. People that work in minimum wage jobs. It has not been nearly commensurate with the cost of living tax increase. And math will bear that truth out. That's just a fact. It doesn't. It surpasses logic even. It's just, no. Don't try to argue that point with me. It's a fact. The Labor Department has been utterly and profoundly remiss at giving adequate, proportional, commensurate, equivalent cost of living adjustments for minimum wage workers. So that hasn't happened. There's been no checks and balances. There's been no accountability. So when people get all up in arms about $15 an hour, I say, you know what, I understand it. Look, I want wages, if anything, they ought to be able to go down. I mean, if your dollar keeps increasing in worth, wages could go down. So, let's just bear in mind this is a two-way street, okay? So if you've got sound economic policies, wages could go down, but still the buying power of what's left keeps going up. That's progress. That's how you define progress. The wealth is being shared, but do you understand why these evil people are against that? They've got to enslave some percentage of the population, and now it's turning out to be the majority. In California, it's the majority of the population now. This is a new trend where the majority of the population cannot afford to be homeowners, so they're renting with less and less hope of ever entering the middle class of home ownership in California. And like a disease, a social, political, and economic disease, it's spreading around the country and then by extension the rest of the planet. Do you understand how this works? So there's nothing I can do. I've been speaking out against this for a long time. It's not my fault. And you've got to, first and foremost understand the issues, why this is happening, how this is happening. But to stop it, it's a runaway train, folks. I mean, that's why I always say it's going to take some huge, monumental, biblical level, unprecedented event, sea-changing event in our society, in our civilization, to turn this ship around, this ship of fools that's careening to destruction, okay? Under full sail to destruction. And I don't know what that's going to be. I know what the Bible says. I know that it talks about how we're approaching this end of the age, and we've been approaching ever since Jesus started preaching it 2,000 years ago. And the beginning of a new age. It's going to be apparently a seamless thing. I guess the whole rapture thing fits in there, where you've got the resurrection of the dead. Like I pointed out before, no atoms, no molecules escape the earth unless we artificially send them into space. So everybody that ever lived and died, for the most part, is still on earth, except maybe Timothy Leary, who was sent out into space on a time capsule of some sort, I guess. Or anybody else that was surreptitiously sent out into space in that manner. But the earth is growing at the rate of 60 tons of cosmic dust.